kitchen was silent, except for the wet, heavy sound of chewing. Liam sat slumped at the small wooden table, his head hanging low. It had been 48 hours. 2 days of driving through the swamps, 2 days of screaming Aisha's name into the dark woods until his voice was nothing but a rasp. He was broken, he was hollow, and he was starving. Across from him, Colonel Jeremiah Klaus sat like a statue. He didn't eat, he just watched. He slowly slid a paper plate closer to his son's trembling hands. On it sat a burger, thick, juicy, still steaming slightly in the cool air of the air-conditioned room. "You need your strength, boy." Jeremiah's voice was low, a rumble deep in his chest. "You can't find her if you starve yourself to death. She wouldn't want that." Liam looked up, his eyes bloodshot and swollen from crying. He didn't want to eat. The grief felt like a stone in his throat. But the smell of the meat was overpowering. It was rich, savory, triggering a primal instinct deep inside his exhausted body. With shaking fingers, he picked up the burger. He took a bite. The silence stretched as Liam chewed. He swallowed hard, then took another bite. Bigger this time. Desperate. The meat was tender, strangely sweet, unlike anything they served at the shop before. Jeremiah leaned forward slightly, resting his chin on his hand. His eyes didn't look at his son's face. They were fixed on the burger, fixed on the red juices running down Liam's chin. There was a flicker in the old man's eyes, not of pity, not of fatherly love. It was a look of cold, dark amusement, a look that said he knew a secret so terrible it would shatter the world if it was spoken aloud. "That is it, son," Jeremiah whispered, a small, twisted smile playing on his lips. "Take her in. Make her part of you. That way, she never really leaves us." Liam kept eating, oblivious to the tears falling from his eyes and mixing with the grease on his lips. He didn't know. He couldn't know. He thought he was searching for his missing wife. He didn't realize he was already holding her. This is Black Mystery, and this is the story of how a town swallowed a sin, one bite at a time. To understand the horror on that plate, we have to go back 3 months earlier, to the day the Chevrolet pulled into the gravel driveway of the Klaus estate. Liam and Aisha arrived with the summer heat. Aisha was radiant. She was a chef from Chicago, a woman of culture and grace, who believed that her love could soften the heart of a stubborn old man. She stepped out of the car, smoothing her dress, her smile bright enough to outshine the Alabama sun. But standing on the porch, under the shadow of a faded Confederate flag, Colonel Jeremiah Klaus did not smile back. He stood perfectly still. His eyes, pale and watery like old ice, swept over her. He did not look at her face. He did not look at her eyes. He looked at her arms, her neck, her hips. It was not a look of lust. It was the look of a butcher inspecting a heifer at an auction. He was checking for muscle. He was checking for fat. He was grading the quality of the stock. Liam bounded up the steps, eager for approval. "Dad, this is Aisha. This is my wife." Jeremiah stayed silent for a long, uncomfortable moment. He took a slow drag from his cigar, blew the smoke in Aisha's direction, and then finally spoke. His voice was dry as dust. "You did not tell me you brought livestock into the house, son." The smile vanished from Aisha's face. She stiffened, her dignity rising within her. "I am his wife, Mr. Klaus, not livestock, and I would appreciate some respect." Jeremiah chuckled, a low, rattling sound deep in his chest. He turned his back on her, opening the screen door. "Respect is for people, girl. In this house, we know the difference between people and property. Wipe your feet. I don't want you tracking mud on my floor." That was the welcome. And in the weeks that followed, the house became a cold, silent war zone. Jeremiah never raised his voice. He didn't have to. He erased her with his actions. If she touched a glass, he would throw it in the trash. If she sat on a chair, he would cover it with a sheet afterwards. He made her feel dirty. He made her feel small. But the most chilling moment came in the kitchen. Aisha was cooking, trying to prove her worth. She made a stew, rich and fragrant. Jeremiah walked in, sniffed the air, and walked over to the pot. Without a word, he picked it up and poured the entire contents into the garbage bin. "We don't eat dark meat in this family," he whispered, leaning close to her ear. "It ruins the purity of the blood." He looked at her then, with a hunger that she couldn't understand. It wasn't until later, much later, that she realized he wasn't talking about the stew. He was talking about her. He was already wondering how to process the problem she represented. He was already sharpening his knives in his mind. The end did not come with a bang. It came with the heavy, rhythmic drumming of rain against the roof. It was a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after their arrival. The tension in the house had stretched so thin it was ready to snap. Aisha was in the bedroom, shoving clothes into a suitcase. Her hands were trembling so hard she could barely zip the bag. Earlier that evening, she had found something in the laundry room, a white hood, and beneath it, a set of butcher's aprons stained with old dark brown spots that refused to wash out. She knew what they were. She knew what he was. She turned to the bed. "Liam, wake up. We have to go. Now." She shook him, hard. But Liam did not move. He groaned, his head rolling heavily on the pillow, his breathing deep and unnatural. A cold realization washed over Aisha. The tea. Jeremiah had made Liam a special cup of tea after dinner. To help him sleep, he had said. He drugged him. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced her chest. She was alone. She grabbed her car keys and the suitcase. She didn't bother with shoes. She ran out into the hallway, the floorboards feeling like ice under her bare feet. She reached the bottom of the stairs. The house was dark, swallowed by the shadows of the storm. She lunged for the front door, her fingers brushing the cold brass of the deadbolt. Click. The sound of a lamp turning on in the living room froze her in place. "Going somewhere, daughter?" The voice was soft, gentle, even. Aisha turned slowly. Colonel Jeremiah was sitting in his armchair, bathed in the warm yellow light of the lamp. He was wearing his white butcher's coat. It was pristine, spotless. In his lap, he held a long, curved boning knife. He was running a whetstone along the blade. "Shk, shk, shk." "Get out of my way, Jeremiah," Aisha said, her voice shaking but defiant. "I am taking the car. I am leaving." Jeremiah stopped sharpening the knife. He looked up. His eyes were empty holes. "You can't leave, Aisha. You are part of the inventory now." "What?" Aisha stepped back, gripping the door handle. "I admit, I did not like you at first," Jeremiah continued, standing up slowly. He blocked the path to the kitchen, the path to the back door. "I thought you were waste, useless. But then I thought about the business. The cost of beef is going up. The margins are thin. And I realized you have good muscle tone. You are organic, free range." Aisha's stomach turned. He wasn't speaking in metaphors. He was looking at her meat. "You are sick," she whispered. "I am efficient," he corrected. He took a step forward. The knife glinted. Aisha screamed. She turned and fumbled with the lock, but her hands were too slippery with sweat. Before she could turn the latch, a hand like a steel trap clamped onto her hair. Jeremiah yanked her back. Aisha fell hard, the suitcase bursting open, her clothes spilling across the floor like spilled guts. She kicked, She screamed. She clawed at his legs, but he didn't even grunt. He dragged her across the polished wood floor, towards the back of the house, towards the kitchen, towards the heavy steel door that led to the yard. No, Liam. Liam, help me. But upstairs Liam slept on, dreaming a drug-induced dream, while his father dragged his wife out into the rain. The last thing Aisha saw, before the darkness of the yard swallowed her, was the light of the smokehouse flickering on, waiting, hungry. The sun rose over Hickory Hills with a cruel, bright indifference. The storm had washed the world clean, leaving the grass sparkling and the air smelling of wet pine. But inside the farmhouse, the air smelled of something else: ammonia, bleach, and the faint metallic tang of copper. Liam woke up with a head that felt like it was stuffed with cotton. The drug from the tea still lingered in his blood, making his limbs heavy and his thoughts slow. He rolled over, reaching out a hand to the other side of the bed. Cold. The sheets were smooth, empty. "Aisha," he croaked, his voice raspy. Silence answered him. Panic began to prick at his skin. He stumbled out of bed, his bare feet hitting the floor, where, just hours before, his wife had been dragged away. But the floor was clean, polished, not a speck of dust, let alone a scuff mark. He ran downstairs, calling her name. The living room was empty. The suitcase she had been packing was gone. The car keys were gone. He burst into the kitchen. There, standing at the stove, was Colonel Jeremiah. He was whistling a church hymn. He was frying eggs. The contrast between Liam's panic and his father's calm was jarring. "Where is she?" Liam demanded, gripping the back of a chair to steady himself. "Where is Aisha?" Jeremiah didn't turn around. He flipped an egg with a spatula, careful and precise. "She is gone, son." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" Jeremiah turned then. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. He tossed it onto the table. It landed softly like a feather. "She left this, took the car, took the cash from the jar in the pantry. About $3,000. Liam grabbed the note. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. It said, "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. Don't come looking for me." "No." Liam shook his head, tears welling up. "No. She wouldn't leave without saying goodbye. She wouldn't take the money. She isn't like that." Jeremiah sighed, the sound of a disappointed parent dealing with a naive child. He walked over and placed a heavy hand on Liam's shoulder. "You never really knew her, boy. You saw what you wanted to see. I saw what she was. A grifter. She saw the work. She saw the quiet life, and she ran back to the city, probably meeting a man she had on the side." He squeezed Liam's shoulder, hard. "Let her go. We are better off. Just us men now. The way it should be." Liam crumbled. He sank into the chair, burying his face in his hands, sobbing. He believed the lie because the truth was too impossible to imagine. Outside, the wind shifted. The door to the kitchen was slightly ajar. And if Liam had stopped crying for just a second, if he had listened past the sound of his own breaking heart, he would have heard it. A low, steady hum coming from the backyard. The sound of the industrial freezer in the smokehouse working overtime, chilling the new inventory, freezing the secrets solid so they could be processed, ground, and served. Silence settles fast in a town like Hickory Hills, like dust covering a grave. A week had passed since Aisha Freeman vanished. The sheriff had filed a report, stamped it runaway, and went back to drinking coffee. To the law, Aisha was just another statistic, another black woman who couldn't handle the country life. But in Chicago, her parents knew better. They didn't call the police again. They called a man who didn't need a badge to find the truth. They called Isaiah Washington. They called him the Ghost. Isaiah rolled into town in a battered sedan covered in road dust. He was a man carved out of granite and regret, 60 years old, ex-FBI, with eyes that had seen too much evil to ever close fully. He knew towns like this. He knew they were smiling traps. He didn't go to the police station. He went straight to the source. Klaus's old-fashioned burgers. It was lunchtime. The place was packed. The air was thick with the smell of searing meat and onions. Isaiah pushed open the door, and the chatter died instantly. Every head turned, a sea of white faces staring at the lone black man in a trench coat. Isaiah ignored them. He walked straight to the counter. Behind the register stood Colonel Jeremiah. The two men locked eyes. It was a clash of predators. Jeremiah's smile didn't reach his eyes. Isaiah's face didn't move at all. "Can I help you, boy?" Jeremiah asked, the insult slipping out smooth as silk. "I am looking for Aisha Freeman," Isaiah said, his voice deep, like gravel grinding together. Jeremiah chuckled, wiping his hands on his apron. "You are wasting your gas. That girl is long gone. Ran off with some cash and a broken heart. My son is still grieving." "Is he?" Isaiah asked. "Or is he just drugged?" The smile on Jeremiah's face twitched. "Just for a second. I suggest you buy a burger. Or get out," Jeremiah hissed, leaning over the counter. "We have the right to refuse service." Isaiah looked at the menu. Then he looked at the kitchen behind Jeremiah. He saw the massive stainless steel grinder in the back room, visible through the service window. It was gleaming, too clean. And he saw the burgers on the plates of the customers. "I will take a burger," Isaiah said slowly. "To go." He paid with cash. He watched Jeremiah wrap the burger in white paper. He took the bag. It felt heavy, warm. Isaiah walked out of the shop, feeling the eyes of the town burning into his back. He got into his car, but he didn't eat the food. He unwrapped it. He stared at the patty. It was thick, dark, and it smelled wrong. It didn't smell like beef. It smelled sweeter. He took a small plastic sample bag from his glove box. He broke off a piece of the meat and dropped it in. "You didn't run, Aisha," he whispered to the empty car. "You are right here." He started the engine. He wasn't leaving. He parked across the street, watching the smokehouse chimney puffing gray smoke into the blue sky. He waited for the sun to go down. The ghost was about to go to work. Night in Hickory Hills is not quiet. It is alive with the sound of crickets and the distant, mournful howl of coyotes. But around the Klaus estate, the silence was unnatural. It was the silence of a graveyard. Isaiah parked his car a mile down the road and walked through the woods. He moved like his namesake, a ghost slipping through the pines. He bypassed the main house, where a single light burned in an upstairs window, casting a long shadow of a sleeping man who had lost everything. Isaiah's target was the brick building in the back, the smokehouse. He reached the heavy steel door. It was locked, of course. But Isaiah had picked locks on Hoover's filing cabinets back in the day. A padlock on a meat locker was child's play. With a soft click, the shackle popped open. Isaiah pulled the door open and slipped inside. The cold hit him first. It was a dry, biting chill that seeped into his bones. Then came the smell. It wasn't the smell of smoked pork or curing ham. It was the smell of chemicals, industrial-grade bleach, pine sol, and underneath it all the faint copper tang of old death. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a stainless steel nightmare. The room was spotless, too spotless. The concrete floor had been scrubbed so hard, the aggregate stone was showing through, Rows of meat hooks hung from the ceiling, empty and gleaming. In the center of the room stood the monster, the industrial meat grinder. It was the size of a small car, its hopper gaping open like a hungry mouth. Isaiah approached it slowly. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small spray bottle and a UV light. Luminol, the truth serum for the dead. He sprayed the floor around the grinder, then the table, then the drain in the corner. He clicked off his flashlight and turned on the UV lamp. The room exploded with light. It wasn't just a few spots. It was a constellation. Glowing fluorescent blue streaks painted the floor, the walls, and the base of the grinder. Someone had bled here. A lot. And someone had tried very hard to wash it away. Isaiah's jaw tightened. He stepped closer to the grinder. He shone the purple light into the gears, deep into the mechanism where a scrub brush couldn't reach. There, caught between the spiraling metal teeth, was no meat. It was something hard, something that didn't belong. Isaiah used his pocket knife to pry it loose. It fell into his gloved hand with a tiny clink. He shone his flashlight on it. It wasn't a bone. It was a piece of gold, a small bent charm from a bracelet, shaped like the Willis Tower, a souvenir from Chicago. Aisha. Isaiah closed his fist around the charm. The rage rose in his throat, hot and suffocating. This wasn't just murder. This was desecration. He turned to leave, to get the evidence to the feds, to burn this whole town to the ground. But then, the lights flickered on. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind him. The lock clicked, and from the shadows of the curing room, a voice boomed out. "I told you, boy. We have the right to refuse service." Isaiah spun around. Colonel Jeremiah stood there. He wasn't holding a cleaver this time. He was holding a double-barreled shotgun. And he was smiling. The barrel of the shotgun looked like two black tunnels leading straight to hell. Colonel Jeremiah stood firm, his finger tightening on the trigger. The smell of bleach in the room was suddenly overpowered by the smell of gunpowder, anticipating the spark. "You people," Jeremiah spat, shaking his head. "You always have to stick your nose where it does not belong. You could have just eaten the burger and left. It was a good burger, wasn't it?" Isaiah didn't flinch. He held the gold charm tight in his fist. He calculated the distance, 10 feet. Too far to lunge. He needed a distraction. "You are done, Jeremiah," Isaiah said, his voice calm, steadying the beat of his own heart. "The feds know I am here. The DNA is all over this room. You can't wash away a soul with bleach." Jeremiah laughed. It was a high, manic sound. "Soul? She didn't have a soul. She was livestock. And I processed her, just like I am going to process you." He raised the gun. Isaiah kicked a metal cart filled with knives. It crashed into the colonel's legs with a deafening clang. Jeremiah flinched. The shotgun roared, blowing a hole in the ceiling, raining concrete dust down on them. Isaiah moved. He wasn't young, but he was desperate. He tackled the old man, slamming him against the control panel of the grinder. The impact was heavy. Bone hit steel. Jeremiah dropped the gun. But he didn't stop fighting. He clawed at Isaiah's face, his eyes bulging with madness. In the struggle, an elbow hit the green button on the wall. Ka-chunk. Whirr. The massive industrial grinder roared to life. The gears began to turn, hungry and loud, vibrating the floor beneath their feet. "Get off me!" Jeremiah screamed, punching Isaiah in the ribs. "I am purifying this town. I am doing God's work." Isaiah grunted, landing a heavy blow to Jeremiah's jaw. "You are the devil, old man, and hell is waiting." Just then, the heavy steel door burst open. "Dad!" It was Liam. He stood in the doorway, soaking wet from the rain, his eyes wide with confusion and terror. He looked at the blood on the floor. He looked at the glowing blue stains from the UV light. He looked at his father and the stranger wrestling next to the roaring machine. "Liam, help me," Jeremiah screamed, reaching out a hand. "This animal broke in. He's trying to kill me. Shoot him." Liam saw the shotgun on the floor. He took a step forward, trembling, but he didn't pick it up. He looked at the grinder. He looked at the bucket of red mints sitting beneath it. "Dad, what is this?" Liam whispered, "Where is Aisha?" Isaiah pinned Jeremiah to the ground, breathing hard. "Tell him, Colonel. Tell him what is in the bucket." Jeremiah stopped struggling. He looked at his son. A twisted, cruel sneer curled his lip. He wanted to hurt the boy. He wanted to break him so fully that he could be rebuilt in his own image. "She is right there, son," Jeremiah shouted over the roar of the machine. "She is in the bucket, and she is in your stomach." Liam froze. The world stopped spinning. "You liked the burgers, didn't you, Liam?" Jeremiah laughed, spitting blood. "You asked for seconds. You ate her. You ate your wife. I fed her to you so she would never leave." The scream that tore out of Liam's throat was not human. It was the sound of a mind shattering. He fell to his knees, clutching his stomach, dry heaving, clawing at his own mouth, as if trying to rip the meat out of his body. Jeremiah took advantage of the shock. He kicked Isaiah off and scrambled for the shotgun. But Isaiah was faster. He grabbed a meat hook hanging from the chain above. "No more," Isaiah growled. He swung the hook. It caught Jeremiah by the shoulder of his pristine white coat. Isaiah shoved. Jeremiah stumbled back. His heel caught on the wet floor. He flailed, arms windmilling, falling backwards, towards the open hopper of the machine. There was no scream, just a wet, sickening crunch as the gears caught the fabric of the coat. Then the arm, then the shoulder. The machine groaned under the strain, but it did not stop. Isaiah turned away. He grabbed Liam and dragged the broken boy out of the room, slamming the heavy steel door shut. But even through the thick metal, they could hear the sound of the grinder finishing its work. When the state troopers finally kicked down the door, the machine had stopped. But the silence was worse than the noise. The smokehouse was bathed in the flashing blue and red lights of police cruisers, illuminating a scene that made even the hardest veterans turn away and retch. Colonel Jeremiah Klaus was gone. Or rather, he was everywhere. The machine he had used to erase others had become his tomb. There was no body to handcuff, no face to mugshot, just a gruesome pile of justice in a stainless steel bin. Isaiah sat on the wet grass outside, smoking a cigarette, his hands trembling slightly. He watched as the paramedics brought Liam out. The boy wasn't screaming anymore. He was catatonic. His eyes were wide, staring at nothing, his hands clutching his stomach, as if trying to keep himself from falling apart. They took him to the county hospital. But medicine can't fix a soul that has been shattered. 2 days later, a nurse found Liam in the bathroom. He had swallowed a bottle of industrial bleach. He had tried to scrub the taste out of his mouth. He had tried to purify himself, just like his father taught him. He died alone, a victim of a sin he didn't commit, but one he was forced to consume. The truth about Klaus's burgers hit Hickory Hills like a nuclear bomb. The DNA tests confirmed it. The meat in the freezer was Aisha. The town went mad. People who had stood in line for those burgers, people who had licked their fingers and praised the flavor, fell into mass hysteria. They vomited in the streets. They burned the burger shop to the ground. They tried to wash the memory away, but they knew it was already in their blood. They had become cannibals. They had become accomplices to a hate crime in the most intimate way possible. Isaiah Washington left town before the smoke cleared. He didn't look back. He drove past the sign that said, "You are now leaving Hickory Hills." And he thought about Aisha. He thought about her smile, her hope, and how this country had chewed her up and spit her out. This story is a warning. It is a reminder that in some parts of this world, we are not seen as people. We are seen as resources. We are seen as threats, or worse, we are seen as food for the system. Jeremiah Klaus is dead, but there are other grinders out there, other monsters in white aprons smiling at you from across the counter. They might not be using meat cleavers, but they are consuming us all the same. So watch your back, watch your circle, and be careful what you swallow. My name is the narrator. This has been a Black Mystery. If this story woke you up, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications, because the truth is scary, but silence is deadly. Stay safe, stay black, and never let them take your light. Time has a way of burying secrets, but some soil is too toxic for grass to ever grow back. 10 years have passed since the fires burned down Klaus's burger joint. Today, that lot in Hickory Hills sits empty. It is just a patch of scorched earth surrounded by a chain-link fence. The locals don't walk on that side of the street. They say if you stand there on a quiet night, when the wind is blowing from the south, you can still smell it. Not the smell of ash, but the smell of grease and copper. They say you can hear the faint, rhythmic grinding of a machine that isn't there. But the real horror of this story isn't the ghost of a machine. It is the reality of the men who operated it. Colonel Jeremiah Klaus was not born a monster. He was made. He was made by a system that taught him his blood was gold and everyone else's was dirt. He suffered from what psychologists call a purity complex. In his twisted mind, he wasn't committing murder. He was performing hygiene. He believed he was cleansing his family tree. And by feeding Aisha to his son, he believed he was reclaiming his property, converting her existence into something he could control. And then there is Liam, the tragic accomplice. He represents the silence that kills. He saw the red flags. He saw the hatred. But he chose to close his eyes because waking up was too painful. His silence didn't just enable the killer. It fed the machine. This case forces us to look in the mirror. How many times have we ignored the microaggressions? How many times have we sat at a table where hate was being served, and we just kept eating because we didn't want to cause a scene? Aisha Freeman wanted to be a bridge. Instead, she became a warning that you cannot love away hate that is rooted in centuries of bloodshed. You cannot cook a meal for a man who sees you as the menu. As we close this file, remember this: evil doesn't always look like a demon. Sometimes it looks like a polite old man in a clean white apron offering you a meal with a smile. Do not accept the plate. This has been a Black Mystery original presentation. If this story chilled your blood, we need you to join us. We are building a community that refuses to look away. Click that subscribe button. Share this video with someone you want to keep safe. Until next time, watch the shadows, but more importantly, watch the people standing in the light.